The night had begun like a dream, designed for magazines. Everything perfectly curated, from the imported roses to the hand-stitched napkins. People whispered about how lucky the bride was to be marrying Daniel Rowan, a man whose name alone carried more weight than most fortunes. Billionaire, philanthropist, visionary. He was the type of man the world adored, yet rarely understood. But the people closest to him knew the truth. Daniel wasn't interested in wealth or status. He wanted peace, loyalty, and a love that felt genuine. And although the public thought this wedding was a fairy tale, his eyes had revealed glimpses of unease long before the bride's outburst. Daniel watched the waitress tremble as she apologized. She had soft features, tired eyes, and the humble posture of someone who had been pushed around by life far too often. Something about her struck Daniel immediately. Not familiarity, but something deeper, as if her presence awakened a part of him that he had buried underneath obligations, expectations, and the deafening noise of a life controlled by image. The bride, Serena, waved her hands dramatically and berated the girl, not caring who watched or how cruel she sounded. Serena's voice echoed with superiority, entitlement, and the coldness of someone who believed the world was meant to serve her. The hall filled with awkward tension as she demanded the waitress be removed immediately. But Daniel stepped forward, lifting a hand gently, asking Serena to stop. His voice was calm, but there was a tremor of disappointment that silenced even the musicians. Serena looked irritated at first, but when she met Daniel's eyes, her expression flickered slightly. The guests leaned in, sensing something gripping, something they were never supposed to witness, cracks forming in a relationship that had been paraded as flawless. As Daniel spoke, he didn't scold the waitress or comfort Serena. Instead, he asked the girl if she was okay, and his sincerity carried across the room like a warm breeze against a winter chill. The waitress, whose name tag read Amelia, nodded bravely, though everyone could see the embarrassment burning through her. Her hands shook as she tried to step back, but Daniel stopped her gently, telling her she had done nothing wrong. In that small gesture, his protective stance, his soft tone, and the deep, searching look in Amelia's eyes, something shifted in the atmosphere. The guests felt it. Serena felt it. And Daniel felt it most of all. The wedding planner rushed to the bride, urging her to stay calm, but Serena pulled away sharply, her face twisted with indignation. She believed the day belonged to her alone, that every action should revolve around her perfection, and Daniel's defense of the waitress felt like a betrayal. But Daniel's mind wasn't on petty mistakes or spilled champagne. His mind was unraveling questions he had ignored for months. Why had he rushed into this marriage? Why had he overlooked the moments when Serena belittled staff, dismissed kindness, and treated people as props? Why had he silenced his own instincts when he felt her love was more about status than soul? As the ceremony approached, Daniel's unease grew heavier. He watched Amelia from a distance as she continued working, despite her trembling hands. Something about her quiet resilience touched him deeply. He saw gentleness in her movements, humility in her steps, and a courage in her eyes that reminded him of who he once was. Before fame, before business empires, before loneliness wrapped itself around him like a chilled fog. The guests returned to mingling, music resumed slowly, and Serena tried to force excitement back into the evening, but the mood had changed. Whispers trailed through the crowd, and subtle glances followed Daniel as he quietly slipped away from the main hall. He found Amelia in a narrow corridor behind the kitchen, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her apron. She apologized again, saying she needed the job and couldn't afford to be fired. Her voice cracked with exhaustion, and Daniel felt a pang in his chest. She explained she worked 2 jobs to support her younger siblings, that she had skipped her own college dreams to care for her family after losing both parents. Her life wasn't filled with glamour or privilege. It was built on sacrifice. And in those few minutes as she spoke, Daniel felt as though she had told him more about life, real life, than he had learned in years surrounded by people who smiled but never cared. He assured her she wasn't in trouble, that the spill didn't matter, and that she deserved far more kindness than she had been shown. Amelia, despite everything, apologized again, a habit born from years of being blamed for things that weren't her fault.
Daniel offered her a comforting smile, but before he could say more, Serena appeared, furious that he had disappeared from their own celebration. Her voice cracked through the corridor like lightning, accusing him of humiliating her, of caring more about a waitress than his own bride. The words stung the air sharply, and guests passing by stopped, frozen in place. The confrontation spiraled, exposing months of unspoken truths. Serena admitted she didn't care for people who inconvenience her. Daniel realized, painfully, that the woman he was about to marry cherished status more than humanity. And as she demanded he choose between her or the embarrassment, Daniel felt something inside him snap, not in anger, but in clarity. He finally saw the truth he had ignored. Serena didn't love him. She loved the world he offered, not the man he was beneath it. Daniel returned to the ballroom quietly, asking the officiant to wait. The guests stiffened when they heard his voice tremble, not with fear, but with a decision that carried the weight of his entire future. He walked to the stage, hands clasped in front of him, eyes scanning the room with heavy contemplation. Serena followed behind, fuming but trying to mask it with a polite smile, though her eyes betrayed her rage. Daniel took the microphone and began speaking, not about celebration, but about values. He spoke about how kindness mattered more than wealth, how real character revealed itself in moments of pressure, and how love should be a place of compassion, not cruelty. Guests exchanged stunned glances as Serena's face hardened. Daniel didn't mention the outburst directly, but everyone knew his words were shaped by what they had witnessed. He spoke of his late mother, who had once told him that the measure of a heart wasn't shown by how it treated the powerful, but by how it treated the powerless. And as he said those words, his eyes moved to Amelia, who instinctively stepped back, unsure of being seen. Serena's eyes widened with panic when she realized he wasn't reading vows, he was revealing truth. Daniel finally looked at Serena with a pain that ran far deeper than disappointment. He explained gently but firmly that he couldn't commit his life to a marriage built on image instead of integrity. Gasps rippled through the hall. The bride's face twisted with shock, her posture collapsing as the truth crashed over her. Daniel announced the wedding was called off. The room erupted in murmurs. Serena shouted in denial, but the decision was final. Amelia, shaken to her core, tried to leave discreetly, but Daniel stopped her, not publicly, not dramatically, but with a quiet request to speak privately. In a smaller side lounge, he thanked her, not for accidentally spilling champagne, but for unknowingly helping him see what he had buried inside his heart for too long. He admired her strength, her humility, her sincerity. She blushed, overwhelmed and confused, insisting she didn't mean to create any trouble. But Daniel assured her she had done nothing but remind him of something priceless: humanity. Weeks passed after the canceled wedding. Media storms erupted, but Daniel stayed quiet, focusing on grounding himself again. Amelia returned to her life, believing she would never see him again. But one afternoon, she found him waiting near the cafe where she worked, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the gentle smile she remembered. He simply wanted to talk, to listen, to understand her world more. Their friendship blossomed naturally, beautifully, without expectations. Daniel found peace in the simplicity of being understood. Amelia found warmth in being valued, not used. And slowly, carefully, their lives intertwined. Not like a fairy tale, but like 2 souls rediscovering light after standing too long in shadows.